Hi YouTube, it's nearing Halloween 2016 and today I'm going to talk about something that I experienced as a kid, and that is synesthesia, which is where you have sort of a mending of the senses where you get an input in one sense and it creates a response in another. And for me, I experienced what's known as chromesthesia, which is where you hear sounds and they produce colors in your head. And it was very Again, I really never paid a whole lot of attention to it because I just assumed that this was how everybody operated. And I didn't even know that this was a thing until I started, till about 2004 when I started doing research on the whole spectrum and all the things that come with it. But yeah, I would hear sounds and I would see colors in my head. Now, the sounds, in order for them to actually produce physical colors, for me, they had to be the timbre of the sounds had to be kind of sharp. So, for instance, in the house, I remember the channel master antenna controller that moved the antenna around on our roof. The buzzing that it made when it clicked back and forth between when it clicked and when it moved, it'd be like zzz, zzz, zzz. That was green. The buzzer on our washers and dryers downstairs were also green too, and I hated those buzzers. I just could not stand them. And then train horns, those were yellow, bright yellow. I remember my dad dragged me outside one time when I was like maybe three and a half. We were at a garden place in town, and this was right next to a railroad tracks that had trains come through on a fairly regular basis. I remember my dad dragged me outside to watch the train come through the crossing, and the horn, when the horn went off, it was just the most piercing sound I can ever remember hearing, and it was just these humongous flashes of yellow in my head when that happened. And I remember it ended up in a meltdown, and I went back into the place just screaming and crying while the train was coming through, and my parents were kind of embarrassed about the whole thing. But yeah, I would group together sounds by colors, and I really can't remember nowadays a whole lot because, like I said, I never paid a whole lot of attention to it. But I remember in school a couple times I would say, "Oh, you know, that sound is like orange," or "That sound is blue," and I would get looks from people like, "What the heck is this kid on?" And I remember that happened a few times. And now when it came to music, this is where it kind of gets interesting. Music, like I said, sounds, in order for them to actually do anything, the timbre of the sound had to be fairly sharp, and so a lot of music didn't do it. But there was one particular song that was quite the exception to it, and that was Chris Isaak's "Wicked Game." And I remember when this song was big on the radio. I was in 5th grade. We're going back to that time in 5th grade again, but I remember one day on summer break, the song was on the radio, and I turned the volume up, and I just closed my eyes, and I let the colors flow, and I just saw this most incredible landscape, just the absolute most incredible landscape. It was a desert landscape, and all the ground was orange, and the sky was blue, and it just all vibrant and pulsating with the music. And it was almost like going on a trip. And that's one of the few songs that I remember that would actually do that effect to me. And I have a picture. This is actually a picture that was I think my uncle took. It's a Kodachrome slide of the Montana steps from 1971. But this is kind of if I do some coloration to it in Photoshop, this is kind of a close approximation of, what I was seeing on that afternoon. And so, an interesting side note to the Wicked Game story, many years later in 2007, when I was in college and finishing up my degree in TV production, I was working in the student labs in the studio at UW Oshkosh for a kids program that we were doing. It was called Titan Forest, and we were doing an outdoor camping episode, and so I was tasked with creating a lighting scheme to do an outdoor kind of thing, and I created this lighting scheme where I had you know, the psych in the studio, I had it painted with blue gels, and then I had a couple of Fresnels down on the floor, kind of shooting up with orange gels on them, to mimic a fire. And as I sat there after I got it done, and as I sat there upstairs in the control room looking at this set on the monitor, it gave me a very, very familiar feeling, and I couldn't think of it. And so as we're kind of in the middle of doing this taping, suddenly Wicked Game popped in my head and made the connection. I had actually recreated in the studio this scene that I saw in my head some 16 years earlier. And it was I had a very, very moving moment right there in the studio. The unfortunate thing about this whole thing here is that as I got older, this went away. It faded away once I started hitting puberty. And today, sounds don't produce colors anymore when I close my eyes and try and see them, but I can still feel it up here. I can feel it trying to trip colors. I'll listen to, tones or songs or something, and I definitely get that sensation of it trying to trip a color sensation in my head. And that's really about all I gotta say about this little topic. Just a little interesting tidbit, because quite a few people who are on the spectrum, they do have synesthesia, and it comes in various forms and shapes and ways and manners, and this is just my incarnation of it. So I hope you found this short little video interesting, and please like, comment, and subscribe.